Benjamin Sesko is on the verge of joining Manchester United, while Newcastle rejected a bid of €5 million less than what United has offered. And as of right now, Leipzig and Manchester United are figuring out the small details of the transfer and the add-ons and whatnot before Sesko travels to United. And with Sesko joining United, there is now a handful of strikers in the Premier League. These are the strikers that the Premier League currently has. Liverpool has Ekitike and possibly Isak. If not, Isak's at Newcastle. Arsenal has Gyökeres. City has Haaland. Chelsea has Delap, João Pedro, and Jackson. Newcastle, like I said, has Isak. Villa has Watkins. Bournemouth has Evan Nilsson. Brentford has Wissa. Crystal Palace has Mateta. Spurs have Solanke. These are all exciting strikers or proven strikers. So the list really does go on for Premier League and the amount of competition there is at the position of strikers. And I said in other videos, I had the preference of United going for Watkins for the sole reason that he's Prem proven. United has consistently, their last two strikers, Xerxes and Højlund, risked a lot of money to buy them. And they're not necessarily proven even in their other leagues. I would say Højlund was definitely not proven. The most goals Højlund ever scored prior to joining Manchester United was 10 goals and 2 assists, 12 goal involvements in 32 matches. His best season was under United in his first season, 16 goals and 2 assists, so 18 goal involvements in 43 matches. So United didn't buy anywhere near a developed product, nor was it a product that I would say you saw huge potential. Whereas with Sesko, who is the exact same age prior to joining United, his best season was this last season, 21 goals, 6 assists. Year before that, 18 goals, 2 assists. Year before that, 18 goals, 3 assists. So the last 3 seasons, he's gotten over 20 goal involvements. Whereas with Højlund, his best was 12 goal involvements. So that is an 8 goals and assists differential. But nonetheless, Sesko also has a lot more Champions League experience prior to joining United. It's not that Højlund didn't have any Premier League experience. If I'm not mistaken, he did get some with Sturm Graz. Yup, he did. He got 2 matches prior to joining Manchester United. And then once joining United, he got those 6 matches where he did score 5 goals, which was obviously really exciting. That was in the first season. But not only is this good for United, it's good for the team as far as competition. Because with Amorim playing a front 3, there's all these options he had prior to all the signings this summer that weren't going to work. Sancho was going to always leave. Didn't have good relationship with the club. Anthony wasn't performing for the club. Garnacho obviously toward the end started having a fallout with Ruben Amorim. But Amorim really only had Højlund, Xerxes, Diallo, Fernandes, and Garnacho to play up there. He didn't really have anything else, and that's not including the wingbacks, because obviously, as we're seeing now, and if I'm not mistaken, he did in the first match he managed against Ipswich, having Diallo as a right wingback is like a cheat code in my opinion. He has really good work rate. Obviously really good at attacking. We saw it in preseason, how he does on that flank. And he does hustle back to defend, which is obviously extremely good for this system. But now that Diallo can play on that right wing-back position, now the competition increases after all of these signings. Now it's Højlund, Xerxes, Sesko, Fernandes, Mbuemo, Cunha. And if the other players do come back, as in Garnacho and Sancho, Anthony, etc., the amount of competition that these players are going to be facing, especially when they only play once a week, twice a week max, it's really going to, in my opinion, level up the competition at the club, which is something that this kind of club needs to have all the time. Because I would say last season, the second half of the season, especially when Amorim got in there wasn't as much competition, especially in that front 3, because he had 5 options for 3 positions. So he was always going to rotate with the amount of games there was. But now that there's only 2 matches a week max, the rotation doesn't have to be as often. And if you're not good enough or you're not performing, you won't play at all. You can probably go weeks without playing now that all these signings have been confirmed. And it's being reported that the bid for Sesko was worth 85 million euros, which it is a lot of money, I will say, especially for someone who, again, the risk of not being Prem proven. Is it a lot of money? Yes. But when you look at all these transfers that have happened this summer, and you see Elanga going close to 60, you see Madueke going close to 60 or whatnot, it makes you think for an extra 20, you're getting a high potential, high ceiling striker. Could it not work out? Of course. It's happened plenty of times at United. But if it does, I do think his ceiling is higher. And I think his ceiling is higher definitely than Højlund for someone who's the same age. And again, I would say that Sesko is more developed than Højlund. Højlund, we picked him up at a time where he wasn't nearly as developed. So maybe he can prove everyone wrong. I do think this is going to put Højlund in a position to really, really perform and honestly not just wrestle every single match. Because what I like about Sesko is that obviously he's big, he can hold up the ball, but making runs in behind. So I'm curious to see if he's going to play exactly like that or if there's any tweaks Ruben Amorim is going to be doing with him. There should be no excuse for the lack of goals for United this upcoming season because behind him you're going to have Cunha, you're going to have Mbuemo, you're going to have Bruno Fernandes, you're going to have Diallo on the flanks. There really is no option other than to score a lot of goals. But I would say the expectation shouldn't be that high. When United's starting striker last season scored 4 Premier League goals, you really have to think, okay, the bar is so low. If he scores 10 next season in the Premier League alone, it's going to feel like a success. That's how many goals Højlund scored in his first season. 10 goals, 2 assists in 30 matches. So do I think Sesko can beat that? Without a doubt. I do think even in his first season, he should have no problem scoring 10 Premier League goals, assists, throw whatever number you want at it, but he should have no problem doing that. Because you could make the argument that Højlund didn't have as much support as Sesko is now going to have. And as a United fan, hopefully, this is finally the striker that stays for a while, but also scores a lot of goals. Because when was the last time United had a striker that was here for years and consistently scored a lot of goals? He just led the line, led the team in that sense. The players who did succeed at a striker position didn't stay here long. Zlatan had a good first season, but he only stayed for a season and a few games after that season. The last striker I could think of that United had that performed week in, week out was Rooney Van Persie, but Van Persie didn't stay extremely long, obviously, and that was over 10 years ago probably now. Not accounting for the later years of Rooney's Manchester United career, but yeah, that was a long time ago. Everyone else that came after was not consistent and did not stay long, one or the other. Anthony Martial stayed here for a long time. I would say he was not consistent, always hurt. Rashford sometimes played striker, a lot of times off the wing, stayed a long time, super inconsistent. Weghorst, loan, didn't score a lot. Ighalo had a few goals, didn't stay a long time. Cavani did fairly good, but did not stay a long time. Ronaldo did it good, obviously, did not stay a long time. So United has been cycling through strikers. And that makes you think it makes a lot of sense why they signed Højlund, why they signed Xerxes. They're young. If they do work out, they should realistically stay for a handful of years. Obviously, that hasn't been the case. Again, it is early on for both of their United careers. So United's doing it again with getting Benjamin Sesko. I think the difference is he is more developed at this stage in his career compared to Højlund specifically, and he has more experience, I would say. And what's really crazy about this deal is that going into the summer transfer window, especially after using the Europa League final and missing out on all of that money, everyone was under the impression that United can't really make that many signings. And they got Cunha done really early on in the transfer window, and it felt like it got quiet for a second. The Mbuemo saga took forever, just like this Sesko saga felt like it took a while. Not as long as the Mbuemo saga, but it just made you think maybe the club doesn't have money and they're just lowballing. We don't know what the case is, obviously never internally until these figures come out, but everyone was under the impression United can't really spend that much money. They've now spent over 150 easily without adding everything up, because if Sesko's 85, I believe Cunha was 60 and Mbuemo was another 60 or 70, probably close to 200 million if you really think about it, and they weren't supposed to be able to spend this much money. And obviously they got some money, according to Fabrizio Romano and The Telegraph, I should say. They saved £12.75 million on the wage savings of Rashford. They had staggered payment structures on Mbuemo and Cunha. They got the Chelsea penalty for not signing Sancho. And last but not least, the almighty important one. They reduced costs following major job cuts. It's the free sandwiches they were giving out. That is what was holding United back. The free sandwiches. Without those free sandwiches that United was giving out to the staff, we wouldn't have been able to get Sesko, Cunha, or Mbuemo. Obviously, I'm just kidding. Those were obviously really hard decisions to make as a club owner, as the CEO. I'm not sure who exactly everyone is involved in with those decisions, but they are things that I think in the grand scheme of things, given that United is in the financial position they are in, they have to make those hard decisions. And I'm not here to defend Ineos, but they walked into the club with that state of financial environment. So they knew going into it, they were going to have to do these things. I think at the face value, people want to be mad at Ineos, but realistically, people should be mad at the Glazers for forcing Ineos to make those kinds of decisions. Ultimately, I think if this transfer does work out for United, and United as a whole has a really good season, it could be a huge stepping stone into even getting even higher quality players. Because if this upcoming season, let's say United even gets Conference League, let's say they even get Europa League, given the amount of competition there is in the top 8. And as a United fan, I would love for them to even get Europa League, which is crazy to say because when you consider the way they played last season to now wanting to make that huge of a jump, especially now that Ruben Amorim has had a preseason and they played good, obviously the hopes are high. The energy is high. We're expecting a lot more now. But if they can even get to that point, they will be able to get significantly better players to build the squad even more. Because you have to think, these players, these three players specifically, joined United when they got close to getting relegated at one point, it felt like. I never thought they were that close, but on the table position-wise, they were close, but points-wise, I never thought they were super in danger. I just maybe being super naive to it, but nonetheless, they're choosing this team that had the worst season ever. They have no Champions League football, no European football. They're only going to play once or twice a week right now. And these players still chose to join United over the team like Newcastle that is in every competition. And I think that's a testament to how big and how strong the brand is at United, because those players, in my opinion, they're thinking, okay, yes, this one season of only Premier League football, but if they do good, then they'll be back in the Champions League or Europa League, and then they can then build something at United because they're all young. They're all 25, 26 or younger, if I'm not mistaken. I think Mbuemo's 26. They can all still have 4 to 5 years at United and succeed. So it makes you think, let's say they do get just for the bare minimum Conference League or Europa League. They now have more cash for qualifying for that. And let's say they played really good. Let's say the points wasn't even far to make it into the Champions League or whatnot. The style of football is much better by this time next year. More players are going to want to join United even more. And you would think that hopefully they figure out this whole financial situation, that they'll be able to, again, reinvest this much. Because if they're reinvesting almost 200 million in this summer transfer window when the funds were tight, I wonder what they'll do next season if they see huge improvements under this manager. There's no way they don't continue to back him if it works out. I might be getting ahead of myself, but nonetheless, I think that's what the future could hold for United fans, and the club if they do perform this upcoming season. Because there is that high pressure for United to perform. Don't get me wrong. I think, especially with this state of environment that we're in with football and managers, they typically get sacked after a year and a half. And Ruben Amorim's already had 6 months, 7 months, whatever it's been. I do see him getting potentially sacked in 6 months if they play the same way they did last season. Because if they start anything like they did last season, and I will say they do have a hard start to the season, but let's say going into December, they're below 10th place, I could see him getting sacked. Would I want him to get sacked? No, because the cycle would just restart. Every year, every 2 years, United gets a new manager. But nonetheless, I think this signing makes perfect sense for United. It wasn't my first choice, but it's not that I'm not excited for it. I think it's a massive improvement to Højlund. I just thought Watkins was better short term to fix the United struggles up top. But again, this could work out. It could not work out. It's obviously happened in the past. I'm hoping it works out. And for the sake of the club, that it works out and that next season they'll be able to reinvest even more.